Hi there, Dr. Parekh back again with something that what I would consider maybe the most important thing that you could do that will reduce your chance of getting the coronavirus and complications from it. Now once again, back the truck up a little bit here, not making any guarantees, not making any claims, nothing like that. But what I'm trying to say is, when you look at a lot of the research that's out there, that anything that can reduce the risk, this is going to help to reduce the risk. Okay? And so what is this one thing? It's one simple thing that you can do, and it is, drum roll please, vitamin D. I was really surprised because I talk about vitamin D all the time. Vitamin D plays a huge role in all kinds of things, and including improving your immune system and preventing infections. In fact, I'll quote a number of places here and have some links below on how it affects the respiratory system, and that's what I'm going to kind of cover a little bit today. Actually, this is going to be kind of a two-parter here. First part is going to go over some of the videos that I have down below, and then the next one I will go in a little bit more detail on how you can get vitamin D and the dosage and such things like that. So, once again, not making any claims. We're just saying, hey, you want to reduce that risk, and that's what we want to do, is try to reduce the risk. We're not saying we can prevent you getting any viruses, including the corona. We're not saying you can cure any of these. We're not saying that. All we're saying is we're going to do some simple things, one simple thing that can help to reduce that risk of getting that. So, how does vitamin D? How does that work? One of the things that we're finding out, the old school was, I'll just cover this briefly, that vitamin D was known as the rickets vitamin, and that before it became the sunshine vitamin, they found out that people who had softening of the bones, especially young kids, that if you gave them vitamin D, that would prevent that rickets. And so that's how the RDA was originally established, but quite low. You don't need that much to help to really kind of prevent that rickets, although it still even goes on today. So, but now they're finding that within the last, probably, I don't know, it's probably been at least 10 years now, more or more, that vitamin D, it's involved in everything from Alzheimer's to asthma to you name it. And part of that is because every single cell in our body has a vitamin D receptors on it. Okay, and that's one of the ways that vitamin D works. It's more actually being considered more of a hormone than it is a vitamin now. And how this works is that vitamin D will find its way into that little receptor in your cell membranes, and then it sends a little messenger. It's kind of like a jetaway going out to an airplane. That jetaway comes up, docks with the airplane, the passengers disembark. Well, what happens is vitamin D, once it connects, it actually works by communicating with the genes and the genetic material in our cells. It goes right to the nucleus, and it turns on, affects, and sometimes turns off different genes, over 2,000 genes in our cells. And then one cell, the respiratory, lung cells might be different, affects them differently than it does kidney cell or bone cell, something like that. And so different messages affects so many different things. So let's kind of get down to brass tacks here and say, well, how does it affect the respiratory cells? Well, one thing I learned, really interesting, this doctor that I have down below there, he's an ear, nose, and throat guy. So title of his lecture was Respiratory Infections and Vitamin D, which, like, oh boy, that catches your eye. And so one of the things I learned from there is that vitamin D, by this action, by affecting the cell, produces a antimicrobial enzyme protein called Cathelicidin. And what it does is it kills bacteria, funguses, and viruses. Oh, really? So every cell in the respiratory tract has this ability to do that, to produce this kind of a somewhat, I suppose, kind of a first line of defense against anything trying to get into our body, trying to invade and get into our bloodstream and such like that, which is just what, these bacteria and viruses are trying to do. They're trying to get in. And so this cathelicidin helps to kill them off. So how do you get cathelicidin? What turns it on? Well, what turns it on is vitamin D. It's directly affected by vitamin D, provided you've got enough vitamin D there to do it. So watch that video down below. Really interesting stuff. The second thing it does is, and maybe by the action of this cathelicidin, but is also, there are these things called cytokines. Okay, another video I have down below there talks about called ARDS, ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and that's what usually kills people with the coronavirus, is this ARDS. And what happens is the body goes through what's called a cytokine storm, where you get these cytokines, these things that are called IL-6 and IL-5, they're called interleukins. And what happens when you get this cytokine storm, the body releases these cytokines in response to an infection, and it gives off all these you get this accumulation of fluids. There's all kinds of what's called exudates and stuff like that, and these fluids cause your little alveoli, which are in your bottoms of your lungs, that causes fills them full of water, full of fluid, and guess what? Then you can't breathe. You got to put in a ventilator to kind of help to keep that oxygen flowing through your body. So, but if you can prevent that cytokine storm, then guess what? You won't have as much of that fluid going around there. So, and so how do you prevent that cytokine storm? Well, you got to control and modulate those levels of these cytokines, these interleukins. Okay, and guess what does that? Vitamin D plays a big role in there. So, bottom line, take some vitamin D. Okay, and I'll get into that in this next video. But let me just tell you this right now. If it were me, if I were had to get checked into a hospital, had to get checked into an ICU, or if I had any sort of relative or friend that was getting into the hospital or the ICU, I would have that doctor, I would insist on them to check their vitamin D levels, okay, and see where they are. Studies have shown that people who had developed respiratory infections, things like that, are generally deficient in vitamin D. They might be very deficient in vitamin D, a high number of them. And so in order to kind of help to control that, any complications from coronavirus, I think your odds are going to be greatly improved if you increase that. In fact, that's the other video I have down there too. Former head of the CDC, this I can't remember what his name is right off the top of my head now. He says, hey, and he's very conservative. He doesn't mince words too often. Says that he thinks it could be a big benefit, and he's looking at probably levels of vitamin D that are maybe even on the low side compared to what a lot of the people who are in a lot of doctors in the trenches that are using this in their functional medicine practices are saying is, well, that's maybe the minimum. We might even be a little bit higher in this. So, and we'll go into that in the next video. But anyway, so take your vitamin D. Start taking it. General rule of thumb is that's we find is safe to take without even doing any testing is about 5,000 international units a day. There are some people that say, hey, another good rule of thumb is 1,000 international units, which is about 25 micrograms per 25 pounds of body weight. And that seems to be a pretty another accurate way of looking at it. And so, yeah, we're talking about vitamin D, just this stuff right there, We've got it both in liquid and pill form. You can get it in a lot of different forms. I'll go over that a little bit with the next video there too. So, anyway, there's your answer. Vitamin D from a supplement or from the sunshine. That's kind of the nicest way to get it, but we're not getting that today. So anyway, hope this helps. If you have any questions about it, just let me know. Write them down below. I'm going to try to check this out, and or call me. Ask me some questions. Be glad to answer them. Try to keep you informed and healthy. So take care. We'll talk to you next time.